hand it over to Jacqui, and she's going to talk to you guys about an engaging community.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. She's wrong. I am going to make you do calisthenics, at least for half an hour, so get ready. That'll come later. No, I promise I won't make you do too much physical exercise, but if you do need to get up and stretch, People for Education started out around a kitchen table, so whenever I talk, I like to think of this as a really big kitchen table. So please feel free to get up, grab a snack, grab a drink if you want to. You're more than welcome to do that. Make yourself comfortable, because that's what I hope we will have a really relaxed night tonight. I don't believe in being too formal about anything. Same with if you have questions. As I'm going through, please feel free to ask questions. I would actually rather answer your questions, because I know that means that you're getting the information you want, as opposed to being bored by me telling you what I want to tell you. So anytime you have questions, please feel free to wave your hand, interrupt me, and I will stop and answer you. So what's going to happen tonight, I'm going to talk about building an engaged community for a few minutes. I know that they did a survey that went out, and you guys got a chance to ask about some of the things you want to learn about. One of them that comes up every time I do something with school councils is how do we engage more parents? So that's going to be the focus of what I talk about, the first part. Then you guys are going to get to work. Okay, because it's a boot camp, so you have to do some work yourself. I don't have to do it all. So we're going to break up into groups around your tables, and we're going to talk about 3 questions, okay? And I'm going to look at the thing, because I'm going to forget what the 3 questions are. The first one is, what is a school council? What are your roles, and why are we here? So we're going to think about that. The other one is recruiting new parent volunteers. So you'll want to listen really closely to what I say, because then you're going to develop more ideas at your tables, and I'll give you lots of hints. And finally, the favorite topic of all school councils, fundraising and finances. So those are going to be group topics. We'll spend a few minutes, we're going to talk about all of them at the tables, and then we're all going to come back together and share the ideas that you developed at the tables. By that time, you should be ready to go home, ready to go. Okay? So let me start by talking just a little bit about People for Education. Does everybody know our organization? Are you aware of them? You might have heard of Annie Kidder's group. We are a public education organization that works advocating for publicly funded education in Ontario. We believe that it is one of the key things in a civil society. It is what makes Canada strong. If you look at what's happening in the United States and Britain, their public education systems are starting to collapse, and they're moving towards a private model. We do not want that to happen in Canada. So we talk a lot about the value of public, and when we say public, we mean publicly funded education. We do research about that, and we also work to help parents understand the education system and their role in it. So that's what I'm here tonight to help you with. I have 2 sons. They are big boys now, so one's 19 and one's 22. One's moved out, closer to that freedom. But I have 17 years of school council experience. Probably 15 of those were as a school council chair, so I did it for many years, and I'm sure many of you, if you're still in elementary school, will have many years of school council work ahead of you. So hopefully this will help you as you go through the next few years with your school councils. So, building an engaged community. It is actually hard to build an engaged community. Parents today are busy, right? We have jobs, we have lives outside of our jobs, we have lots of things to do, and we have media that we want to check out, right? How to engage parents in the school and the school community is one of the ongoing challenges of school councils. In my many years, I worked in schools that, well, I always went to the schools that every other parent said you should never send your kids to, because they were my neighborhood schools. And I really believed in going to my neighborhood schools, and if they weren't good enough, then I'm going to make them better. And by working on the school council, I hope to do that. So because I worked in schools that were often low income, very diverse economically and racially, we had a lot of different challenges in engaging parents in the schools. So what I'm going to share with you is some of the tips that we developed as a school council when we worked through, and that happened both in my elementary school and my high school. So I've got experience at both levels. So I'm going to just share some of the tips that I came up with, and I call it my 7 steps for building an engaged community. Just so you know, there are tip sheets on your table that actually have them written out, so you can either totally ignore me and whisper to your neighbor, but at least you don't have to write a lot of notes, okay, because they're there for you. So please feel free to refer to them, and that way you don't have to madly write notes. So the first tip that I tell people when it comes to building an engaged community is you actually have to want it. And it may seem obvious. You may all be here going, well, yeah, of course we want it. That's why we're here. We want to engage more parents in our school council. You would be surprised the message that school councils sometimes send to new members. I do a school council workshop at our conference every year, and the first question I always ask is the one that I'm going to ask you. When you walked into your first school council meeting ever, what did you feel? Anybody? New, right? Intimidated, right? Outsider, right? Outsider, right? When we do our conference, it's almost all school council chairs. So these people have already been engaged in their system, right? Every single one of them said, I felt like it was a clique. Didn't know what I was supposed to do. Didn't know what I was allowed to do. Didn't know what my role was. Now, most of us who are here, who still stayed on that school council, are brave, strong people who said, but I'm going to find out because I'm determined. For a lot of parents, if that's the first message they get, they walk out of that meeting saying, I'm never darkening that door again, right? So you need to be really aware when you see that brand new kindergarten parent coming into their classroom, or coming into your school council meeting at the beginning of the year. Don't look at that as, oh, but I'm busy talking to my friend about what we did this summer, and I'll get to that person eventually. Go right over to them, right? Introduce yourselves. Make them feel that they are a welcome part of this, okay? It's okay, it may be a child. It may be a child. So if you think that you're not doing this, one of the tricks is to think about the advantages of having an engaged community. I always say, look at the number of kids in your school. Now, multiply that by 2. Most kids have 2 parents somewhere in their lives, right? That's the number of resources you have in your school. If you can engage with every parent in that school, that's the number of resources you have to pull from. You have in there doctors and lawyers and electricians and you name it, all sorts of different people with all sorts of different skills that can contribute to your school community. So remember, you always want to be showing that you want people to be there, okay? The other thing that happens is if you build a sense of community or a sense of comfort in the school, people also start to develop a sense of responsibility for that school. I like the story from, this is actually a school in Manitoba, and I'm going to tell 2 stories about this school because it was a pretty amazing principal. School in northern Manitoba, predominantly Métis, very low income, almost no parent involvement. New principal comes into the school, and she starts going through the school trying to figure out how am I going to get parents in here. So the first thing that she noticed is when she arrived at the school door, it was a wall of signs. Visitors must report to the office. Children not allowed to go this way. Do not do this. Wipe your feet before you come in, right? Not a very welcoming way to enter a school if what you're being told is, here's all the things you can't do, right? So she pulled down all of those signs. Now, this is a school in northern Manitoba with very wet, cold, yucky winters. Hallways get messy. So what did she do? She took down all the signs that said, clean up after yourselves, and just put a mop in a bucket there. Didn't say a word. And guess what she found happened? Parents would come into the school with their kids. They'd go, oh, I'll just wipe up that little mess we made, right? Teachers would come in, see a mess and go, oh, okay. Community members would come in and go, oh, I see a bit of mess. Oh, look at that, there's a mop right there, I can clean it up, right? They felt welcomed, they felt part of the community, they felt a responsibility to keep their school looking good, right? It can actually make a difference. The more I feel welcome in my school, the more I'm willing to commit to my school, the more I feel responsible for my school being a great place to be, right? So that's another advantage to having an engaged community. Once you've got them engaged, then you harness that engagement, right? You harness that passion that they have, that responsibility they feel for their school to help build that better school community. And the more people you have on board with that, the more successful you're going to be in able to do that. Okay? So, now that you want an engaged community, make your school a welcoming place. Okay, let's go back to the signs, right? That is a barrier. Instead of having the thou shalt not signs on the door, ask if you can hang up signs that say welcome. Maybe saying welcome in many different languages. Saying welcome in First Nations languages, If you don't think you have Indigenous students in your school, think again. 92% of elementary schools, 96% of high schools have Indigenous students in them. We just honored Justice Murray Sinclair from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission last night. It is really important that we engage our Indigenous learners, okay? So make sure that there's welcome signs up in all sorts of different languages. There might be somebody who speaks that language, and what a difference it makes for that mom who's just come from Somalia to see a sign in the window saying, welcome in Somali. It can make them feel much more welcome, right? Really easy thing to do. It takes Google Translate, right? Or if you don't have the signs here, write to Toronto Board. They've got a whole poster that has all the different signs on it, right? The Aboriginal Education Centre has one with 50 different Aboriginal languages that just says welcome. What a great way to make your school feel welcoming right away. Going back to the principal in Manitoba, again, low-income school. One of the things she noticed that parents never participated in, and she found this really strange, was photo day. Hardly any kids got their pictures taken because the first thing that they got sent home was the package that said you have to pay $35 for this package and $50 for this package. They didn't have the money. So the principal changed it. And she said, first of all, it's not school photo day, it's family photo day. She invited families to come in and get a family portrait done. Okay, so it didn't have to be just students, it could be anybody in your family. And it was free. Every parent, every family who came in to get their picture taken got one free photograph, okay? She went one step further. She asked permission to have a second copy of that photograph, which she took and lined the hallways of the school with the pictures of the families, saying, welcome to our school. Again, when you see your family's picture hanging on the wall of the school, you feel a little bit of ownership for it, right? They had almost 100% participation in their photo day. They had families of 2. They had families of 20. They had a family with 20 grandparents, uncles, aunts, kids show up to get their picture taken. What a way to engage the community. They actually got people coming into the school who had never darkened the door before. Now, this may not be something you can do in your school, but it's those kind of things that thinking outside the box, what can we do as a school to make that school feel welcoming to people who may not feel welcome otherwise, right? So you have to really think of different ways of doing that. This is the one where I sometimes get in trouble. Don't let security outweigh community. I actually don't like locked doors on schools, okay? I remember going to my son's school to pick him up for a dentist appointment one day, and this was back in the good old days, and as I said, I'm old. And so it's a grade 7-8 school, and they have a bank of doors at the front. There's probably 8 doors, so I start at one end. And I'm going, and I can't find a door to get into the school. And I'm standing there and I'm going, well, we're going to be late now. This is not good. So finally I see this little tiny box on the wall. So I go, oh, well, maybe that's an intercom. So I press the button and I get, pardon? One more time, pardon? And then the door opened for me. It was like magic. And I walked in, and there's the stairs going upstairs. Nobody's there to greet me. I could have gone straight in, straight up, anywhere I wanted. Wow, that's a great security system. I feel so secure about that, right? What actually makes schools secure is having lots of people in there, right? If you have lots of parent volunteers hanging out in the hallways and hanging up pictures, that's what makes it secure. It's when you have hallways that are empty that kids get scared and that kids are alone, right? So you have to find the balance. I know we need to lock our doors. I know people are worried about that. Believe it or not, your kids are just as safe now as they were in the 1950s. It's just media is way more effective about getting the word out about how dangerous our world is. But in reality, it's not. So try to find that balance, right? The horrible story my principal told me is if somebody really wants to get into school, they're going to get in anyway. So even the best security is not going to prevent that from happening. But you didn't hear that from me. So another thing that works, if you can do it, and again, it's harder in schools today because we don't have the extra space we used to have. We used to have a volunteer room, okay? Parents could come in anytime. There was actually a room there. It had a coffee maker. It had a photocopier. Teachers knew that it was a place they could bring stuff if they needed something done. and parents could drop in anytime, pick up a project, and help out. It ended up running a reading program for grade 1 students out of there because parents knew there was a place. Sometimes you went there and it was a group of parents hanging out, having coffee, and chatting. No work was being done, but the work of community building was happening in that room, right? Parents felt comfortable coming in. If there is a corner in your school that you can dedicate to parent volunteers and let them make it their own, what a great way to make them feel engaged. And finally, the simplest of things, friendly smiles and greetings. Okay. Now this is a lot to do with the staff, of course. We hope that the school secretary, when parents come into the office, actually smiles, or the principal, when they see this parent actually smiles. But as school council members or volunteers in the school, it's also your role to do that, to make sure that it feels warm and welcoming. So if you see a new parent that looks a little bit nervous, especially as a school council member, walk over to them and say, hey, are you new at the school? It's so great to see you here. I think you're gonna love it here. Oh, you've got Mrs. Smith, start a conversation. Make them feel welcome. If you have any questions here, my name's Jacqui, and here's my phone number. You can call me anytime. I've been here for a couple of years. I know the scene. If you have any questions, let me know, right? What a difference it makes to that parent. A warm, friendly face can make a huge difference in making them feel engaged. Okay. Number 3, I'm trying to go through this quickly so we can get to the questions, because that's going to be the big part. Community building 101. To truly engage people, they need to feel like they are part of a community. So I always tell the story, and this was several years ago. Do you guys know what pro-grants are, your school council's parent reaching out grants? So this was the first year that they did parent reaching out grants. And I was actually in Belleville doing a talk to school councils. And to say that people were excited about the parent reaching out grants was an understatement. It was the first time the school councils were actually being given money to help with parent engagement. So they were excited and they had great ideas. And then the superintendent got up and the superintendent said, well, I know you guys are excited about your pro-grants, but I just want to say, I don't want it being wasted on barbecues. Now, me being me, of course, I got up right behind him and said, I have to say, I'm a big fan of the school barbecue, right? Not everything you do for parents has to be intellectually stimulating. It doesn't have to be about how to make your child a better child or how to make them get an A on their math test, right? Sometimes just doing things for fun is what really builds the community. Best events we had at our schools, I don't know whether you guys do these, movie nights. Love movie nights. They were hilarious, right? Nobody ever watches the movie. I never saw a single person actually watch the movie that was on. We would have them in our gym, movies up here. All the kids are down front. They bring their sleeping bags and their pillows. They are running around like mad children, laughing, playing, beating each other up, whatever kids do. Where are all the parents? At the back of the room, talking to each other. They're all talking to each other. Every once in a while, 1 or 2 parents would wander in to separate the masses of children, but it didn't matter that nobody was watching a movie. I just stood back and went, I love this, because what I saw was a community developing, right? Those are the kind of events that can really work. Cultural events, okay? In my school, we had a very diverse population, and almost half our school was Muslim. So we had 2 big events in the year. We had an Eid celebration at the end of Ramadan for the Muslim families, and we had a fun fair at the end of the year, which was supposedly for the whole school, which basically the non-Muslim families came to, and nobody ever went to Eid. Now, it was never said that non-Muslim families were not welcome at Eid. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The Muslim families were saying, please, come and join us. And I'm also a person who loves food. Now, it was a potluck supper for Eid, so I can't miss the opportunity to eat, so I went. And I fell in love with the food. So the first thing I said to them was, it'd be really great is if you guys made food like this for the fun fair. They said, oh, well, we'd love to do that. So they showed up with tons and tons of food for the fun fair. My moment of aha was, I don't know whether it's a tradition at your school, a tradition at our school is that the men always run the barbecues at the fun fair. It's always the dads. And it was a beautiful thing to see the Muslim dads and the non-Muslim dads all at their barbecues, barbecuing madly away, talking to each other, right? We had broken down that barrier. The next year at the Eid dinner, we had a huge turnout of non-Muslim parents. That barrier was broken. It's like, wow, we can actually talk to each other. We can actually have a relationship. Food does a really amazing job of doing that. But that was an example of where just bringing people together, opening that door to them, giving the opportunity to connect with each other, resulted in a really strong, and it was a very, very firm barrier that was between the two groups. By the time I left that school, there was no wall there. We were all friends. We all intermixed. It was wonderful, right? So that's the kind of thing you want to see happening at your school. Events that involve kids also work really well, okay? So you know that parents will always come out if their kids are involved in something. So if you make the event interesting for kids, the parents are going to want to come. If you say, at your school council meeting, I'll get to the school council meeting in a minute. If you say at your school council meeting, we have childcare, the kids are going to go, oh, man. Now, unless you have if you have a really amazing childcare provider who does cool stuff, but most kids are going to go, oh, but I'd really rather stay home. It's like, I got to get out. Yeah. If you say, I hear that there's going to be, and I'm making this up because teachers may not be happy if I say, there's going to be a teacher-student basketball game tonight. Oh, and by the way, we're having a school council meeting on the side. Students might want to come out for that. Right? And if students want to come, they're going to be dragging their parents with them. When, at high school, what we did to engage the parents in the school council was we always held the school council meetings on the night when everything else was going on at the school. So if there's parent-teacher interviews, we're having a school council meeting that night. If there's an open house, we're having a school council meeting that night. Because if you think it's hard in elementary school, wait to try to engage parents in high school. Okay, it's really hard then. Are any of you high schools? Any high schools? Oh, good, you got some here. And it can be done. And you don't give up. I promise you, I did the same thing at my high school. I worked really hard at it, but, and it changes in high school, right? I actually think the level of engagement drops in high school, and I think that's okay because our kids are bigger now. One of the joys that I found about high school councils is we didn't ever fundraise because the kids do their own fundraising in high school, so we actually got to focus as a school council on school council things instead of on fundraising. So sometimes there's advantages to high school councils too. Sorry, and I'm just going to grab a sip of water. Now that you've built your community, you need to make connections early and often, okay? One of the things that can really help is letting your teachers know that you exist, okay? You would be surprised at how many teachers don't know about school councils or don't understand their role or think, oh, they're the nice parents who every once in a while throw us $100 for programming, right? No, let them know what you are. Make a letter up, okay, saying, hi, we're the school council. Provide your contact information. If you are the school council chair, put your name and email, and if you're willing, your phone number at the bottom, right? Ask teachers to share it with parents. Teachers are often the first adults that parents connect with in the school. It's unlikely to be you unless you are a crazy school council chair like me who just relentlessly stands outside the door during kindergarten, when kindergarten starts, because I really want to meet everybody. But if you can't do that, get the teachers on side to be your allies. Make sure they're letting parents know that they know about the school council, okay? Make sure you have information tables at every single event. The best way I grew, this was high school people, listen to this as a tip. Most of the things that we did in high school, we had a small school council, it was all about communication. So what did I need to do? Get email addresses. How did I do that? I went to parent-teacher interview nights. I went to open houses. I went to everything that they did because, again, parents don't come into the school. They come into the school even less often because they don't walk their kids to school. And I just relentlessly, are you on the email list? Are you on the email list? Are you on the email list? By the time I reached a critical point, which in our high school was about 300 parents, now word of mouth started, right? And so then I was getting emails, well, wait a minute, I'm not on the list. Can you put me on the email? Of course I can. Welcome aboard, right? But it's work. Right? Being a school council chair is actually work. You do have to work at it sometimes, and that was one of the times where I really worked, and I would get other school council members to do it. I tried to get every single parent who showed up for interviews to sign up, right? It took me 5 years to build the list to 300, but then within 2 years it was up, we had 900 kids in the school, and we had it almost up to 500 by the time I left. So that's actually amazing. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a lot of work, and it really paid off. The parents loved it. Most of what we sent home was information about what students were doing. So, you know, it's exam week, things like that. Parents were so happy to get anything because Once kids reach high school, they don't talk about school at all. So parents getting anything from the high school, they were so excited by it. That was our method of engaging them, and it really paid off. But it's work, and you have to keep doing it. So you can use all sorts of different methods, but that is one of the key ones, is information tables. And anytime there's a number of parents in the school, concerts, anything like that, that's the time to do it. Just have a little table. I even ask sometimes for 5 minutes to talk to parents. So at the beginning of when we have our curriculum night or open house, I would always say, can I have 5 minutes to talk to parents just to say, hi, we're the school council, we exist. Sign up for our newsletter, right? It's all it takes, and at least they know you're there. Finally, if you can do it, create parent ambassadors. We had student ambassadors at our school. Because our school had a lot of newcomers, we had student ambassadors who would hang out with the kids, and they all spoke their own language. So if we had a new Somali student come in, we'd have an older Somali student connect with them to tell them all of the important things. This is the cool place to hang out at recess. This is what we do for lunch, right? These are the things kids need to know. To heck with the curriculum, what they really need to know is where to hang out at recess. And that's what the student ambassadors did. Have the same thing with parents. Right? If it's new, it's the first school council meeting, partner up, right? Have the old parents, I use in quotes, connect up with a new parent. Hi, I'm your parent ambassador. I'm here to help you through the next year. If you need anything, here's my phone number and my email. Call me, right? And it can be for parents, it can be for other school council members, however you can work it. If you can get a handful of parent ambassadors who are willing to share their contact information and just be available to other parents, we are one of the best sources for other parents. There are so many times when I've just felt like it's the end of my life because my kid's not doing what they're supposed to. And it's so often been another parent who, often an older parent who'd been through it, it's like, it's okay. They grow out of it, or it's okay, being there too, right? Sometimes that's what parents need, is they need that hug. They need that arm around the shoulder. Having a parent ambassador can really help to do that. Okay, number 5. Invite, invite, and invite again. It is not enough to send out a monthly newsletter and in the bottom corner to say, school council meeting every Tuesday, every second Tuesday, right? We'll ignore it. Parents will ignore it, I guarantee you, right? So you put it in the newsletter, you put it on the school website, you send it out by Twitter, you send it out on Facebook, you develop a phone tree. Anything you can do. In high schools, they actually have, some elementary schools have it too, I don't know whether you guys do, a call-out system, like an auto dial. So you get in high school, it's always great because it's actually usually, a student in your home named Devlin Trollope was absent periods 3, 4. Oh, Dev, you skipped English again. But it also has other purposes. It doesn't have to just be about attendance at high school. It can actually be about, there's a school council meeting tonight. What a great way to reach parents. If you can use the system to do that, it's another way to get the phone call right in. And by the way, as you get into high school, change the code on your phone because they will erase messages. I found that out the hard way. But it's another way to reach. So any way you can. And the most important one that I emphasize is face-to-face. If you want parents to come out to school council meetings, it helps so much if they already know somebody, okay? It's really hard to come to a school council meeting. It really takes a brave person to walk through that door. If they know that, oh, but Jacqui's going to be there. Oh, it's okay. She said that she was going to be there. I can go sit beside her. That can make the difference. So it's actually worth hanging out, especially the first few days of the school year. Hang out when those kindergarten kids are coming in. Hi, welcome to school. Hi, great to see you. Make those connections so that the next time you see them, which will be at the barbecue, not at that formal parent thing, and you're going to say, hey, how's it going? Are you settled in? How's it? Any questions about what's happening? Did you know there's a school council meeting next week? It'd be great if you could come, right? You work them up to it slowly. But that face-to-face contact can make such a huge difference in terms of connecting with parents. Okay. Number 6, we're almost there, and then you guys are going to start working. Number 6, make meetings friendly and inviting. I can't think of anything more scary than when somebody says to me, okay, we're going to rebuild the playground. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we fundraise $10,000 for new playground equipment. Could I have a seconder for that motion? And half the school council goes, what's a motion? What does it mean to second? Robert's Rules of Orders are great. Don't get me wrong. They can be a very useful tool. You can do the same thing without the scary language, okay? Most people are not used to formalized meetings like that. I used to be a lawyer. I'm okay now. But I used to be a lawyer. As a lawyer, I had never gone to a meeting where we made motions or did things like that, even though I was very highly trained. But because I worked on my own, I'd never had a situation where I was in that. So that was another intimidating thing with the school council meetings. Like, wow, they do motions and they have agendas and they do all these weird things. What does this all mean, right? Make it friendly. So you can have that same motion for that fundraising for $10,000 by saying, so there's some interest around the school about getting some new playground equipment. Let's talk about possibly fundraising $10,000. How do people feel about that? Right? You open up the floor. Okay, so now we're talking about, so you've just made a motion, by the way. You might not realize that, okay? You talk about it. Now, 99% of school councils work on consensus. I'm assuming you guys do too. It's, for the most part, if it may be controversial issues sometimes, but for the most part, they work on consensus. So you talk about it for a while. As a school council, you go, okay, so it sounds like we all seem to agree here that this would be a good idea. So okay, let's put it as our target fundraising goal. $10,000 is really a lot. Let's put it as our target fundraising goal, $10,000 to go towards playground equipment. Does that work for everybody? Everybody nods their hand, shakes their head, yep. You've just made a decision, and you didn't scare anybody away, right? So you don't need that formal, stilted language. You can work your way around that language to make sure that it feels friendly for parents. Make sure parents know they don't have to be on a school council to come to a meeting. That is a huge assumption that people make. Oh, I can't come, I'm not a member. School councils are not only open to parents, they are open to the community, okay? I, as a community member, could come to your school council meeting. I promise I won't. I've done enough. But anybody in the community can come. They're considered public meetings, okay? So make sure parents know that. They know, too, that if they show up for 4, they're probably going to get suckered into doing something. But by the time they come to 4, they're going to be willing to do something, so that's okay. But yeah, it's really important to make sure that they know that they can actually come just to listen. They don't have to be a member or do something. They can just come and listen. Let them know that. Bring in interesting speakers, right? Parents like to actually learn things too. So if you can have the business part of a school council meeting be done in half an hour and then have somebody talk for 20 minutes about something interesting. It can even be a teacher. I always love how parents are so intrigued by what goes on. To us, it is a mystery what happens in our child's classroom, right? I want to know how you teach him math. Believe it or not, it's actually interesting me to find out how my grade 3 student learns how to add fractions or whatever it is they're doing, right? So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to bring in Barbara Coloroso and pay $10 million to have her come in to talk to your school. It might just be the science teacher saying, wow, we did the coolest experiment today, let me tell you about it, right? Parents love that stuff, right? They love to know what's going on, okay? Let them find out something interesting. Make them accessible. If distance or time is an issue, we have this wonderful thing called technology. Your board probably has a program that you could probably use at some point where you can actually have the meeting online, right? We have a program, People for Education, so we can hold meetings online. People just sign in, you can have video if you want to, you can use Google Groups, there's a bazillion different options out there. You can combine it, right? So you can actually have a live meeting and also have people online. So you have the live meeting, you have people there talking, you have somebody on the computer, and somebody on, and they're mic'd, so they can't see necessarily, but they can hear what's going on. And it's like, I'm sitting at home in my PJs with my tea, yay, the best way to have a school council meeting. And I can be sitting there listening and, oh, I've got a question, I type it in, it shows up, and the person who's watching over it says, oh, and there's a question from, Jacqui, who's sitting at home in her PJs drinking tea. She wants to know what we're doing with that $10,000 that we fundraised last year. Okay, so think of other ways to do it. There's this wonderful school in the States. I found out the principal because he likes to tweet about what goes on in his school, so I've just become obsessed with him because he's such an amazing, engaging principal. What they did with their school council meeting is they took it off-site, right? For some parents, just coming into the school is intimidating, right? But they may feel more comfortable going to some other place. So he took it to a mosque. He had the whole school council meeting go to a mosque, and it was offered online. So they set up a computer so people could participate. They had the biggest participation rate in a school council ever at that meeting, right? Oh, people were curious. They wanted to come check out the mosque. Other people were, hey, it's our mosque, great, we can come here and do this, and it's in our community, and it's honoring our community, what a great way to do it, right? It could be the public library. Your public library probably has a room you could use. Say, let's go to the library, and you invite the librarian to be your guest speaker, right? Come to the school council meeting, get a library card, right? Find out about what the school library has to offer. Go to your community center, have it in the community center. Have the director of your community center come in and say, here's the programs we offer for kids, right? Give parents something that they're going to gain as well as the school council. It gives them an opportunity to learn about their community, connect in. It's a great opportunity to spread the word. Welcome new people enthusiastically. So don't be the clique, right? If you see somebody come in, you stop talking to your best friend who you've known for 6 years because you've been on council together for 6 years, and you turn to that brand new person and you say, hi, I'm Jacqui. It's so great that you came out. Please, welcome. What grade are your kids in? What are their names? Who's their teacher? Oh, they got Mrs. Smith. Oh, that's great. She's the nicest teacher. You'll love her. Whatever it needs, right? You make sure you connect with those people. And at every meeting, introduce everyone every time. It helps old people like me who forgets names. It also puts everybody on a level playing field, right? If everybody knows everybody and there's a new person that walks in, oh, you're new. Can you introduce yourself? Wow, I just got put on the spot. I'm feeling really welcome, right? No, have everybody sit down and go, okay, we're all going to introduce ourselves. So now that person doesn't feel like they're the only person who may be new or standing out, right? And again, it helps old people like me remember names. Explain how the meeting runs, right? If you know that there's a new person in that room, even if there's not a new person, sometimes for old people like me, it helps to refresh our memories. Okay, so we've got about 5 things on the agenda tonight. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to run through these things. At the end, we're going to have a vote. If you have a vote or however you do it, stop frequently and say to people, does anybody have any questions? Are you okay with where we're going here, right? Make sure that everybody's on the same page before you move on. It makes people feel more comfortable, okay? And then finally, this is number 7, and this is where you get this is where you get off the hook. Lower expectations and be patient, okay? Relationship building takes time. When I started at my elementary school council, there were 4 people on council. When I left 8 years later, there were 35 people on council, right? But it took that long to build to that. It didn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to connect with people. You need to make those relationships work. You need to be out there shaking hands and meeting people and being at all those events and signing up people and connecting in every way that you can to make sure that you're actually building that community. That's what takes a huge amount of time. Remember that it's actually what parents do at home that makes the biggest difference. I forgot to bring my other tip sheet, which is the 4 tips for parent involvement. They all relate to what parents do at home. Being on the school council is a huge contribution to your community. It does not make your kid get an A. So do not judge parents based on the fact that whether or not they come to a school council meeting. It does not mean they're not involved, okay? My executive director, one of the most involved people in education I have ever met, was told by a principal, well, high school parents don't care about their kids because they're not involved in their school. To which she replied, actually, we're really busy at home with our kids. That's why we're not in the school, because at high school, you actually need to spend a lot more time with your kids focusing on all the issues that teenagers deal with, right? But there was an assumption there, we don't see them in the school, therefore they're not involved. Don't make assumptions about other parents. It's not very nice school council behavior, right? Acknowledge all parent contributions and their value. If that single mom with 4 kids, if all that she can do is tape a few things together for the grade 8 Christmas craft show, accept them with warmth and thank her for her contribution. You have to acknowledge every parent has value, right? If parents feel devalued, if they feel, and it's particularly true of low-income parents, they often feel they don't have the social capital. I'm not coming to a school council meeting because nobody wants to hear from me and I don't have any right to be there. You need to work really hard to make sure those parents feel just as welcome and just as engaged as you are, okay? That's the key thing. Finally, it's actually okay. School councils can run on 4, 5, 10 people, okay? You will never get 100% parent turnout to yours, and if you did, what would you do if you had 900 parents at your meeting? So school councils can actually work really well and effectively if there's 10 people. just make sure you're reaching out to all those other parents so that they know they can send in an email or they can talk to you over the phone and they can have input on what you're talking about at the council meeting. It's okay. If you spend all your time worrying about getting more parents out, you'll never get anything done because you're always going to have about the same number of parents. Still, just try to engage them in a bigger way and make sure there's other things that they want to do. If you do all of those things, hopefully, you'll get 10 people out to your council meeting. Just kidding, it will grow. But those are the tips that I like to talk about in terms of building that engaged community. And really, it comes down to relationships. You need to build relationships with the parents in your school in order to get that sense of community built. And from there comes the responsibility and the willingness to pitch in and do stuff for the council. Okay, I'm done. That's me. Now, questions about what I've said so far? Yes. Oh, she's got a list. I like that.
With regards to sharing meetings,